You owe us $180,000. My father didn't say hello. He didn't ask how my week was. He just pointed a thick finger at my chest and slammed a greasy ledger onto the lunch table. For your brother's arm. For the surgeries. It's time to pay the blood debt, Sabrina. He shoved a payment plan toward me. Starting today, you transfer $3,500 a month to this account. Or you get out of this family. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't ask why my own parents were looking at me like I was an ATM with a pulse. Instead, a strange, cold calm settled over me. It's the same feeling I get at work when I find a discrepancy in a ledger. The moment you realize the numbers don't lie but the people do. I looked at the payment plan my father had shoved across the table. $3,500 a month. Indefinitely. You're right, I said. The tension in the room changed frequency. It went from aggressive to confused. My mother blinked, her hand hovering over her wine glass. My father frowned, expecting a fight he had already rehearsed. You agree? He asked, suspicious. I agree that debts should be paid, I said, my voice steady. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and set it on the table, screen facing down. But if I'm going to sign over half my salary for the rest of my life, I need to hear it again. I need to be reminded of exactly what I'm paying for. I turned to Cody. He was leaning back in his chair, picking his teeth, basking in the sudden shift of power. Tell me, Cody, I said, keeping my voice soft, almost reverent. Tell me about that night in the alley. Tell me how you saved me. Cody straightened up. This was his favorite scripture, the gospel of his own heroism. He cleared his throat, his eyes darting to our parents to make sure they were watching. We were walking home, Cody began, his voice taking on a practiced, dramatic weight. I saw those three guys shadow us. I knew they were going to hurt you. So I stepped in front. I told you to run. I took the first hit. I took the pipe to the arm so you could get away. My mother sniffled, wiping a tear. He almost died for you, Sabrina. I watched Cody's face. I saw the smug satisfaction of a liar who has told the story so many times he actually believes it. But as he spoke, the real memory flashed in my mind, sharp and violent. 10 years ago. We were walking home. Cody saw the shadows first. He didn't step in front of me. He grabbed my shoulders and shoved me, hard, toward the dark mouth of the alley. Take her, he screamed. She's the one you want. He didn't fight. He ran. He sprinted away, leaving his 14-year-old sister as bait. The gang members didn't touch me. They laughed. One of them shook his head and said, "Your brother's a rat." They chased him down because running made it fun. They caught him 2 blocks away and broke his arm because he wouldn't stop crying. Back at the lunch table, Cody was finishing his performance. It hurt like hell, he said, rubbing his arm for effect. But I'd do it again. Because that's what a brother does. I protected you. I looked at him. I looked at the parents who had built a shrine to a coward because they needed a hero so badly they were willing to sacrifice their daughter to build one. You really are a hero, Cody, I said. You took that beating all by yourself. Damn right I did, he said. I tapped the screen of my phone. The voice memo app stopped recording. I had it. The confession. The why. The foundation of their entire moral blackmail, captured in high-definition audio. Okay, I said, picking up the phone. Now that we've established the debt, let's talk about how I'm going to pay it. They thought they had ambushed me. They thought the Sunday lunch was a surprise attack, a calculated strike on my guilt while my defenses were down. They looked at me, the quiet daughter, the reliable accountant, and saw a victim. But they forgot what I actually do for a living. I don't just crunch numbers. I am a senior fraud analyst for a forensic auditing firm. I spend my days hunting ghosts in the machine, shell companies, hidden assets, and people who think they are smarter than the paper trail they leave behind. I knew about this meeting 3 weeks ago. Started with a single ping on my phone at 2 a.m. An automated alert from a credit monitoring service. New inquiry, high-risk personal loan application. Amount, $60,000. I didn't panic. I didn't call the bank in a tearful rage. I opened my laptop and went to work. Tracing the application didn't require a warrant. It barely required coffee. The applicants were sloppy. They had used a private network, but they had logged into their personal email accounts from the same digital address 5 minutes prior. I looked at the screen, the blue light illuminating my apartment in the dead of night. The digital fingerprint pointed to one specific location, 42 Oak Street. My parents' house. I sat there in the dark, scrolling through the data. It wasn't just one loan. It was a blitz. Credit cards in my name. Personal loans. Even an attempt to access my retirement fund. They hadn't just stumbled into financial trouble. They were actively trying to hollow me out from the inside. They were stealing my future to pay for Cody's past. Most people would have called the police right then. But in my industry, you don't strike when you see the smoke. You wait until you see the arsonist holding the match. You need intent. You need them to believe they have gotten away with it so they get careless and sign their names on the dotted line. So I waited. I let the calls go to voicemail. I let them schedule this lunch. I let them bake the lasagna and set the table and rehearse their speeches about family unity and blood debts. I looked across the table at my mother. She was watching me with a look of predatory hope, thinking her tears had worked. She thought she was manipulating a daughter. She didn't realize she was sitting across from an auditor who had already built the case file. So, Gary said, his voice booming with false authority, pulling me back to the present. We have the paperwork ready. It's just a formality. A power of attorney so we can manage the payments directly from your account. It's cleaner that way. He reached under the table and produced a thick manila envelope. I looked at the envelope. I knew exactly what was inside. I had seen the digital drafts weeks ago. It wasn't a payment plan. It was a financial death sentence. Cleaner, I repeated. Exactly, Susan added, pushing the envelope toward me past the gravy boat. We don't want you to have to worry about the logistics every month. We'll handle the burden. I touched the paper. It felt heavy. You really thought of everything, I said. We just want to help you do the right thing, Gary said. I smiled. It was the same smile I give to embezzlers right before I slide the evidence across the interrogation table. I can't sign this, I said softly. Gary's face darkened instantly. What did you say? I can't sign it, I said, my voice flat and clinical. Not because I don't want to, but because the assets you're trying to leverage, they don't exist anymore. The silence was absolute. It wasn't the confused quiet from before. It was the terrified silence of predators realizing the cage door was open. What do you mean, don't exist? Susan asked, her voice trembling slightly. We saw the deed. We saw the estimate last week. The equity is there. The equity was there, I corrected. 2 days ago. I reached into my bag again. This time I pulled out a single sheet of paper, a photocopy of a cashier's check. I sold the house, I said. 48 hours ago. It was a sale-leaseback agreement with a private investment firm. They bought it for cash. We closed yesterday morning. Gary stood up so fast his chair tipped over. You sold my house. It was never your house, Gary, I said, my voice ice cold. It was my house. My name on the deed. My name on the mortgage. No. It belongs to a holding company in Delaware. But the equity, he shouted, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. Where is the money? Gone, I said. Offshore. Into an irrevocable trust you can't touch, managed by a firm that specializes in asset protection. You can't sue for it. You can't borrow against it. And you certainly can't forge my signature to get a loan on a property I don't even own anymore. I watched the realization hit them like a physical blow. The power of attorney document in Susan's hand, the weapon they had forged to enslave me, was now just a worthless piece of paper. You traitor, Susan whispered. We needed that money. For the family. No, I said. You needed that money for him. I pointed at Cody. You needed it because he gambled away his rent money again. Because he owes people who don't send polite letters. Cody flinched. He hadn't expected me to know about the gambling debts. I saw the credit card statements too, Cody, I said. Online casinos. Sports betting. You didn't lose your job. You got fired for stealing from the register to cover your losses. Gary slammed his fist on the table, rattling the china. That is enough. I don't care what you sold. You still owe us. You signed a verbal contract the day your brother took that beating for you. A verbal contract? I laughed. It was a sharp, humorless sound. Based on a lie? It wasn't a lie. Gary roared. He saved your life. Did he? I asked. Then why did I find this? I pulled out the final piece of paper. It was a printout from the National Insurance Claims Database. What is that? Gary snarled, eyeing the paper in my hand like it was a weapon. It's a receipt, I said. From the past. I slid the printout across the table. It stopped right in front of him next to the greasy ledger. $180,000, I read aloud. Paid out in 2014 by the Victim Compensation Fund. Claimant, Gary and Susan Reynolds. Beneficiary, Cody Reynolds. The color drained from my mother's face so fast she looked like she might faint. Gary stared at the paper, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a hook. You already got paid, I said, my voice rising just enough to cut through their shock. You filed a claim for every surgery, every therapy session, every aspirin. The state paid for all of it. That money was for his pain and suffering. Susan shrieked. It was compensation. Exactly, I said. Compensation. Which means the debt is settled. But you didn't just spend it, did you? You spent it and then you kept the ledger. You kept the receipts. And you decided to charge me for the same bill. I looked at Cody. He wasn't smirking anymore. He looked sick. That's called double dipping, Cody, I said. And in the eyes of the law, it's not just greedy. It's felony insurance fraud. You can't prove we spent it, Gary stammered, desperate. I don't have to, I said. The bank records I pulled last night prove it. You used that money to pay off your gambling debts in 2015. You used it to buy a boat you couldn't afford. You didn't spend a dime on Cody's recovery that the state didn't reimburse. You ungrateful little witch. Gary lunged across the table, grabbing for the paper. I snatched it back. Careful, Dad. That's just a copy. The original is already with my lawyer. You're destroying this family. Susan wailed. Over money. Over paper. No, I said. I'm destroying your business model. You don't have a family. You have a Ponzi scheme. And I'm the last investor. We will sue you. Gary roared. We will sue you for emotional distress. We will sue you for abandonment. Go ahead, I said, standing up. Sue me. But know this. The moment you file a lawsuit, this document becomes public record. The insurance commission will see it. The IRS will see it. And they don't care about your sob stories. They care about the $180,000 you stole from the state and are trying to steal again from me. I looked at them one last time. The fear in their eyes was the only apology I was ever going to get. I'm done, I said. I'm leaving. And if you ever try to contact me again, I won't just send a letter. I'll send the FBI. I turned and walked toward the door. I reached for the brass handle. My hand was steady. I was 3 seconds away from the cool air of the driveway and the end of this 10-year nightmare. But I forgot one thing about narcissists. They don't let their victims leave. They escalate. A heavy weight slammed against the wood next to my head. Gary didn't just step in front of me. He threw his entire body against the door, his chest heaving, his face inches from mine. He smelled like stale coffee and violent desperation. He twisted the deadbolt shut. You're not going anywhere, he breathed, his voice dropping to a low, animalistic growl. Not with that phone. Not with that recording. Behind me, Susan let out a sharp, terrified whimper. Gary, let her go. Shut up, he roared without looking at her. His eyes were locked on mine, wide and bloodshot. This was the extinction burst. The moment the parasite realizes it's dying and decides to kill the host. Give me the phone, Sabrina. Give it to me and maybe I won't break the other arm. The threat hung in the air, heavy and real. He wasn't my father anymore. He was a man who had lost his money, his house, and his reputation in the span of 20 minutes. And he needed to hurt someone to feel powerful again. I didn't back away. I didn't scream. I looked him dead in the eye. You just made a mistake, Gary, I said softly. The mistake was thinking you were family, he spat, reaching for my wrist. I pulled my hand back and held the phone screen up to his face. The call timer was running. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. I dialed 911 before I handed you the ledger, I said. The line has been open the entire time. The dispatcher heard you admit to the fraud. She heard you threaten to break my arm. And she definitely heard the deadbolt click. Gary froze. His eyes flicked to the screen. False imprisonment, I listed, my voice clinical. Extortion. Assault. That's 3 felonies in 30 seconds. You're on a roll. You wouldn't, he stammered, his grip on the door faltering. I already did, I said. Listen. The silence in the hallway was shattered by the wail of sirens cutting through the suburban quiet. They weren't distant. They were in the driveway. Blue and red lights flashed through the transom window above us, painting Gary's terrified face in alternating shades of bruising. Bang, bang, bang. A heavy fist pounded on the other side of the wood. Police. Open the door. Gary stepped back, his hands shaking. He looked at the door, then at me, then at the ruins of his life. He looked small. Open it, I commanded. He didn't move. He couldn't. He was paralyzed by the reality crashing down on him. So I did it for him. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. 2 officers stood on the porch, hands near their holsters. "Ma'am? Are you safe?" "I am now," I said, stepping out past my father. I pointed back into the house. "That man refused to let me leave. And you'll want to check his pockets for a stolen insurance document." As I walked down the driveway steps, I didn't look back to see them putting the handcuffs on him. I didn't need to see it. I heard the click. And that was enough. Peace is expensive. Costs you your history. Costs you the illusion of having a family. But as I sat on my balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline, sipping coffee that didn't taste like anxiety, I knew the audit was finally complete. My phone chimed. 1 notification. State of Colorado versus Gary and Susan Reynolds. Judgment enforced. I opened the attachment. It was a summary of the clawback. The Victim Compensation Fund doesn't negotiate. They had seized the boat. They had garnished the wages. And because my parents had spent the money years ago, the state had forced an involuntary bankruptcy liquidation to recover the rest. They lost the house. They lost the cars. They lost the reputation they valued more than their own daughter. And Cody? He was facing 3 years of probation and mandatory restitution for his part in the fraud. The hero was finally paying his own bill. I closed the email. I didn't feel happy. Happiness is too light a word. I felt balanced. I reached into my bag and pulled out a book. It wasn't old or greasy. It was a brand new black hardcover ledger with crisp, white pages that smelled like potential. I opened it to the first page. I didn't write down a debt. I didn't write down a grievance. I wrote down a single number, my net worth. The money from the house sale sitting safely in an index fund. The salary from my new job. The value of my silence. I looked at the number. It was positive. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't in the red. I wasn't an asset to be liquidated by parasites. I was a sovereign entity. I closed the book, set my pen down, and watched the sun break over the mountains. The blood debt was paid in full. I hope this story reminds you that you don't owe anyone your life, not even family. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more stories of justice. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to break a blood debt?